So I am recording this on my computer tonight at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Mainly because I can't sleep and I feel like God has put something on my heart. I've never really had an audience. It's just been me talking to myself. So, couple things, I guess. Not really. I don't know. Just life's been crazy, I guess. And I'm thinking about starting a podcast just for my random thoughts. It don't have to make sense, but for those who understand it will make sense. Y'all follow me? Anyways, I wanted to talk about faith. Faith, okay? I don't know where to start. Okay. Just get right into it, I guess. So, we all know what faith is. I would hope so. Even if y'all don't believe, if y'all are non-believers, we all know what faith is. I just put a note right here for myself. Let me pull it up on the handy dandy phone. Alright, in Hebrews 11 verse 1, it says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Meaning, faith is what you have in something you can't see. Is what I understood it as. We go back, and the whole chapter 11 in Hebrews talks about having faith. And I feel like I've caught myself struggling with that here lately. Just, the devil gets in my head and it's like, oh, are you sure you believe? Are you sure, this is it? And I'm just like, yes, like, I know I believe. Like, I know it's the darn truth because, like, I've seen progress, big change in my life and everything. So it goes on saying, "For by it the elders obtained a good report." Here, let me just pull it up in my handy dandy Bible, and I'll read it here. I need to study the books of the Bible again. Figure out where they are. That's Genesis, man. Yep, I'm just looking. There we go. This is a new one. So. Alright. In King James Version, which I like reading in that, and then I'll translate it to NLT. There we go. Alright. So it says in Hebrews 11 verse 1, "Now faith is substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." In King James Version. In NLT, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It is the evidence of things we cannot see. It pretty much says the same thing. In verse 2, I'm just going to read the whole thing. "For by it the elders obtained a good report." Through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. By faith, Abel offered unto God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, by which he obtained witnesses that he was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and by it he being dead yet speaketh. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death, and was not found because God had translated him. For before his translation, he had this testimony that he pleased God. But without faith, it is impossible to please him, with a capital H. For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. By faith, Noah, being warned of God of things not seen as yet, moved with fear, prepared an ark to the saving of his house, by which he condemned the world, and became heir of the righteousness which is by faith. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, and as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, goodness, Lord, giving me tongue tiredness right here. The heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars of the sky in multitude, and as sand which is by the seashore innumerable. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For they that say such things declare plainly that they seek a country. Truly, if they had been mindful of the country from whence they came out, they might have had opportunity to have returned. But now they desire a better country, that is, an heavenly. For God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he hath prepared for them a city. By faith Abraham, when he was tired, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son. Just like God, he offered up his only begotten son. Man, the Bible be speaking tonight. Of whom it said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. By faith Isaac blessed Jacob and Esau concerning things to come. By faith Jacob, when he was a dying, blessed both his sons Joseph, and worshipped, leaning upon the top of his staff. By faith Joseph, when he died, made mention of the departing of the children of Israel, and gave commandment concerning his bones. By faith Moses, when he was born, was hid 3 months of his parents, because they saw he was a proper child, and they were not afraid of the king's commandment. King meaning Pharaoh. Kind of think of the name for a second. We all know the story of Moses, and if y'all don't, Moses was sent to save the Israelites from Egypt when they were in captivity from Egypt and everything. My foot feels weird. By faith, Moses, when he was come to years, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season, esteeming with reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he had respect unto the recompense of the reward. By faith he forsook Egypt, not fearing the wrath of the king, which was Pharaoh, for he endured as seeing him who is invisible. Through faith he kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. By faith they passed through the Red Sea as by dry land, when God told Moses to lift his staff and split the Red Sea, which the Egyptians, essaying to do, were drowned, because he closed the waters after the last Israelite got out. Is how I imagine it. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were compassed about 7 days. By faith, the harlot Rahab perished not with them that believed not, when she had received the spies with peace. That story, the spies, I don't really recall what they were there for, but they were there, and they told her to let down a red rope, if I'm not mistaken, and she did. The walls of Jericho fell except for her house. It did not fall because she trusted in the spies, which the spies believed in God. So, and what shall I more say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon, of Barak, Lord, I don't know how to say some of these names, and of Samson and Jephthah, and of David also, and Samuel, and of the prophets, who through faith subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might obtain a better resurrection. And others had trial of cruel mockings and scourgings, yea, moreover the bonds of imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn a sword, were tempted, were slain with the sword. They were wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented. Let's take a second for verse 37. It tells you what they've went through. They've been stoned, they were tempted, were slain with a sword. We all know what that means. They were killed. They were cut. They were beat. They didn't have, I'm trying to find the right word, but they weren't rich. They weren't like rich with money. They didn't, not saying that some of them looked physically rich. I'm saying like the majority of the time. Understanding this verse, that they were not rich, They were rich in love because they had Jesus on their sides. But they were not rich with money, rich with treasures and all that. Their richness came from something else, which was the love of God. Okay? So, with that being said, we are going to be tempted. We're going to be sought after. We're going to be stoned with words, with sticks, sometimes, The world today has gotten pretty crazy, so, we don't know what's going to be thrown at us, literally and physically, okay? So, as Christians, we have to stand up. We have to prepare ourselves for this, okay? That's why I wanted to talk about faith. Alright, continuing with verse 38. Of whom the world was not worthy, they wandered in the deserts, and in the mountains, and in dens and caves of the earth. And these all, having attained a good report through faith, received not the promise. God having provided some better thing for us, they without us should not be made perfect. Excuse me. Alright, I want to go back. I'm going to go back and hit the subjects that I wanted to cover. I put away in my mind. It was talking about verse 4. Alright, so it talks about the faith of Abel. That's in Genesis, I think. But it talks about him having faith. And right here in the NLT version, it says, and it was by faith that Abel brought a more acceptable offering to God than Cain did. Abel's offering gave evidence that he was a righteous man, and God showed his approval of his gifts. Although Abel is long dead, he still speaks to us by his example of faith. Abel offered the best of his crops that he grew. And Cain was jealous, and Cain killed Abel. Enoch. I have long forgotten this story. So the story of Enoch, I don't know what all he did, but I do know that he was one of the people who God took him, like, just was like, come up to heaven. I think he sent down a chariot of horses, I think maybe 5 horses, if I remember correctly. But he sent down a chariot and got Enoch and took him to heaven. So Enoch did not die. He just went to heaven because of his faith, which is pretty amazing. Like, that is pretty amazing. And then in verse 5 in the NLT version, it says, it was by faith that Enoch was taken up to heaven without dying. See, he didn't die. He disappeared because God took him. For before he was taken up, he was known as a person who pleased God. And listen here. And it is impossible to please God without faith. I want to say an amen to that. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. That means us Christians need to start seeking him more. That's including myself. And like, I don't know what it is, but when I'm reading and I get into this zone where I'm just reading and I'm studying and I'm sitting here and I'm just like, yes, it's I can't help but smile. Like I got so many great things waiting on me, and I'm just that's goodness. Let's take a minute for verse 6. It says, anyone who wants to come to him must believe that he exists, and he rewards those who sincerely seek him. Can I whoop that any harder? Can I hit that any harder? We have to seek him. We have to. Okay? I gotta leave it at that. The story of Noah right here. Noah had faith. I remember. I watched VeggieTales and all this. Y'all, I watched all the Bible movies. And this is why most of the things stick in my head, okay? Noah, he had faith and built that big old ark. He built that ark. And if it hadn't rained, like, ever where they were, and everybody else around him was like, it's not going to rain, it's not going to rain. You're crazy, you're crazy. Well, let me be crazy. Let me be crazy and let me go build my ark. Because when that flood comes, I'm going to be ready. But ain't no flood coming again. Ain't no flood coming again. We want to know what the rainbow stands for. It don't mean gay. I might get canceled for that. It does not mean that. It means God promised not to flood the earth again. Okay? Okay, guys? Y'all come at me for that one. I'm sitting here. I got my Bible ready. I'll look it up. I got my Bible ready, okay? I'm ready for this. I am ready. He promised not to flood the earth again, and that rainbow is the symbol of it. Okay? Alright. Back to the verse. He obeyed God, who warned him about things that had never happened before. See? It had never rained before, and he listened to God when God told him to build that ark. By faith, Noah condemned the rest of the world, and he received the righteousness that comes by faith. My eyes can't get any crazier. Actually, they can. They might get crazier before this video is over. But God told him to tell people, and he told them it was up to the people to believe him or not. God ain't gonna force us to believe in him. He ain't. This is free will right here. Okay, guys? Let's see. Abraham. God called him to leave his home and go to another land that God would give him as his inheritance, which God called Abraham to leave, can't remember the place, to go to Israel, if I remember it correctly. And he went without knowing where he was going. He had no clue where he's going. He was just following God. That's some pretty big faith right there, because I don't like not knowing where I'm going. But you know what? God's got me. God's got me. And I'm pretty good with that. I'm pretty good with that. And I'm just like, you know what? Let's take a step back. I need to chill right here. God's got me. God knows where I'm going. And I'm going to hold his hand. And even when he reached the land God promised him, he lived there by faith. for he was like a foreigner living in tents, and so did Isaac and Jacob, who inherited the same promise. Abraham was confidently looking forward to a city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. It was by faith that even Sarah, let's talk about Sarah. Sarah was too old to have a kid. I don't think she ever had a kid before this one. Sarah, God was like, you know what? You're having a kid now because you believe me. Believe in me. Okay? So she had a kid when she was too old. She believed that God would keep his promise, and so a whole nation came from this one man who was as good as dead. A nation with so many people. That's I can't remember. I can't remember the name. Like the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore, there is no way to count them all. That's all of us. That's all of us. It's gotta be all of us. You know what I'm saying? All these people died still believing that God had promised them. They did not receive what they was promised, but they saw it all from a distance and welcomed it. They agreed that they were foreigners and nomads here on earth, meaning that they did not belong here. They did not belong here. They belonged up there in heaven. That's where they believed they belonged. Okay? Let's go back. They did not receive the full promise. You know, Abraham did not see all of his kids. Because he'd be pretty old now. Let's just say that. He did not see all of his kids. But he had faith and saw it from a distance. And I'm trying to find a way to, explain that better. But that hits it. I know what it's meaning. He had faith. He believed God was going to, fulfill that promise. And he, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Obviously, people who say such things are looking forward to a country they can call their own. If they had longed for the country they came from, they could have gone back, but they were looking for a better place, a heavenly homeland. Up there, guys, like I was saying, that is why God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. Heaven. That's what he has prepared for us. It was by faith that Abraham offered Isaac, his only son, Isaac. We all remember the story of Abraham and Isaac. And if y'all don't, I'm going to tell y'all anyways. So God told Abraham to sacrifice. I hope I don't get flagged. If it flags, it flags. I don't know. Anyways, we all know that God told Abraham to go sacrifice his son because Abraham had kind of wandered away and focused more on his son than God. And he listened to God, and he was walking up that mountain, and they seen a ram stuck in the bushes. He did not get the ram. He put his son down there and was about to, and an angel appeared and told him not to do it and to go get that ram and sacrifice the ram because God had to test his faith. God had to test him. And he would have aced that test too because he knew God had him. He knew God had him. Even though he didn't know the outcome of this test, he didn't know that God wasn't going to be like, oh, wait, don't do that. You know. He didn't know that. But he had faith in him. He had faith in him. And he was going to do what God said he was told to do, you know. Let's see. Even though God had told him, Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted, Abraham reasoned that if Isaac died, God would be able to bring him back to life again. He didn't really for sure know that he could and he would, but he had faith in God. And God, like, he knew that, God keeps his promises. Lana, Miss Girl, chill. I'm skipping through. Alright, right here, it leads into the story of Meg talking about Moses. It says, it was by faith that Joseph, which is verse 22, it was by faith that Joseph, when he was about to die, said confidently, that's a big word right there, that the people of Israel would leave Egypt. He even commanded them to take his bones with them when they left. It was by faith that Moses' parents hid him for 3 months when he was born. They saw that God had given them an unusual child, and they were not afraid to disobey the king's command. The king's command was kill all sons. All of them. Every single one that popped out of the mama's stomach was to kill him. And I think it was like 3 years and less, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. But Pharaoh sent out a message, was like, kill them all, except for the girls, because he thought, Pharaoh knew somebody was coming to take over. And he thought if he could get rid of all the guys, that nobody would be strong enough to take over. Let me just say this, even if he was successful getting rid of all the guys, he would have gave the job to a girl. Okay? But God had a plan, and the plan was Moses. So they put Moses in a basket going down the Nile River full of crocodiles. Okay? Them crocodiles did not eat that baby. That baby did not drown. The baby floated all the way to the Pharaoh's daughter. She took in that baby. The baby's sister, don't ask me her name, I can't think of her name, followed the baby down the Nile River, seeing that he was taken up by the daughter of Pharaoh, and asked her to go find one of the ladies who had recently given birth so that she could take care of the baby, because the Pharaoh's daughter didn't have the stuff to take care of the baby. But the mama did. The mama took care of Moses, raised Moses for the Pharaoh's daughter. She knew it was her son. Did Pharaoh's daughter know? I don't know if she knew at the time, but let's say that she didn't. She raised her son to, obey God and listen to him. She taught him the Hebrew ways and not the Egyptian ways. And I'm sure he lived a big double life. He learned the Hebrew ways and then was like, oh, you also got to learn the Egyptian ways and play this Egyptian character while you grow up. So, that's how I imagine it happened. It could have happened completely different. I don't know. I wasn't alive during that time. Alright. It was by faith that Moses, when he grew up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He chose to share the oppression of God's people instead of enjoying the fleeting pleasures of sin. He thought it was better to suffer in the sake of Christ than to own treasures of Egypt, for he was looking ahead to his great reward. He was looking ahead to that reward. That reward was heaven. Guarantee it. It was by faith that Moses left the land of Egypt, not fearing the king's anger, because he had, guard, I think. He was kept right on going because he kept his eyes on one who is invisible, which that is God. You can't see him. You can't see him. You can feel him. You can hear him. But you can't see him, you know. It says, it was by faith that Moses commanded the people of Israel to keep the Passover and sprinkle blood on the doorposts so that the angel of death would not kill their firstborn sons. Some of them did not listen, and their firstborn sons did die. And one of them was the Pharaoh's, which really greatly upset the Pharaoh. It was by faith that the people of Israel went right through the Red Sea as though they were on dry ground, but when the Egyptians tried to follow, they were drowned. It was by faith that the people of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days and the walls came crashing down. It was by faith that Rahab, the prostitute, was not destroyed with people in her city who refused to obey God, for she had given a friendly welcome to the spies. Let me just say this, God uses anybody. No matter what your past is, God will use you. But you gotta have faith. She did not have faith at the time. But after this, I'm sure she did have some faith. Whew. Let me just say that. If I was in her spot, I'd be like, you know, I'd be, woo. God uses everybody. No matter what your past is, God will use somebody. He wants to use you. He's going to use you. Okay? That verse right there, verse 31, pretty much says all the story of Rahab. Pretty much hits the highlights of it anyways. And then it says, how much more do I need to say? It would take too long to recount the stories of faith of Gideon, Barak, Samson, don't know how to say that word, David, Samuel, and all the prophets. By faith, these people overthrew kingdoms, ruled with justice, and received what God had promised them. They shut the mouths of lions, quenched the flames of fire, and escaped death by the edge of the sword. Their weakness was turned to strength. They became strong in battle and put whole armies to flight. Women received their loved ones back again from death, but others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I remember that story. We talked about it one time at church this year. Love that. I was like, I know that story. So they were put in a fiery pit torture thing because they refused to bow down to somebody that was not God. And they were like, we are not denying my Lord. And they're like, we are putting you in this fiery furnace. And they were like, okay, bring it on. Because we are not denying him. Even when everybody else was. They were like, we are not. So they was put in there and they did not die. And they seen an angel that God had sent might have been God. Might have been Jesus. You know, I can't remember, and I don't think they was very specific on who it was. But let's just say they seen an angel in there with them. There was 3 people who went in there, but there was 4 people in there because of that angel. They did not die. They opened it up and they're like, y'all still alive? And they're like, God's got my back. Okay. I love retelling stories the way I like. It's fun. Let's see. But others were tortured, refusing to turn from God in order to be set free. They placed their hope in a better life after the resurrection. Some were jeered at, and their backs were cut open with whips. Others were chained in prison. Some died by stoning. Some were sawed in half. That is very gruesome. And others were killed with the sword. Some went about wearing skins of sheep and goat, disputed the oppressions and mistreated. They were too good for this world, wandering over deserts and mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground. All these people earned a good reputation because of their faith, yet none of them received all that God had promised. For God had something better in mind for us, so they would not reach perfection without us. Alright. I think that hits almost everything. I'm gonna be discussing a lot more here lately. I'm thinking about loneliness and all this. I'm gonna hit a lot of topics, and this right here, I just want to say it was a prayer that I had prayed last night, which really didn't start off as a prayer, but it slowly turned into a prayer. It was more like me talking to God, and then once I start talking, I start praying about all these things. So I just had wrote it down, and I'm gonna slowly touch on them not slowly. I'm gonna touch on them. I'm gonna touch on it about what all it talks about, and then I will, I think I might read it. I don't know if I want to read it, but I just want to say this. Thank y'all for listening, and I pray that y'all will understand what I'm trying to say, and that the words that I spoke came from God, and that y'all just seen the light of God come through me. And I also pray that y'all will just open your hearts and your minds to God, and just I can't think of anything else to say, but again, for those who follow me who do believe, pray for each other, because it's getting dark in this world today. And as I continue to go through this and everything, I will keep y'all in my prayers. And for those who don't believe, I ask of y'all to, again, open your hearts and your minds to Him. And if y'all got any questions, just leave a comment, or y'all can email me, or get in contact with me whenever and ask me anything, and I'll try my best to answer it. So y'all have a good night, and I will see y'all in the next video.